The first game of the 1980 World Series had turned Veterans Stadium into the center of Philadelphia. Red pinstripes moved across the artificial turf. The upper deck seemed to rise straight into the October night, and every pitch brought another wall of sound down toward the field. The Phillies were playing the Kansas City Royals, trying to win the championship that had always escaped them. Bake McBride came to the plate with 2 runners on base. He swung, and the ball went out for a 3-run home run. Philadelphia moved in front. For a player whose power was never the first thing anyone noticed, it was the largest home run of his life. The Phillies won the game. They won the World Series in 6. McBride hit .304 in the only World Series he would ever play. But there was something the people watching him run those bases could not see. His feet hurt. His knees hurt. One knee joint had deteriorated so badly that a Philadelphia writer would describe him as essentially a one-legged player. His uneven gait had already led some fans to decide that McBride was lazy, or that he did not care enough to push himself. He rarely explained what his body was going through, and his quiet personality made the judgment easier. So the home run carried a contradiction that would come to define the way his career was remembered. At the moment Bake McBride reached baseball's highest point, the physical gifts that had brought him there were already being taken away.
Before the surgeries, before the criticism, and before Philadelphia knew him as Shake and Bake, McBride had come from Fulton, Missouri, by one of the least conventional routes a major league outfielder could take. His father, Arnold McBride, had pitched for the Kansas City Monarchs of the Negro Leagues. Bake grew up surrounded by athletic possibility, but the sport that eventually became his profession was not available to him at Fulton High School. The school did not have a baseball program. Instead, McBride became an all-state football player. He played basketball. He ran track. Those were the places where his speed could be seen and measured. He was already 6'2", lean and fast, an athlete whose body seemed designed to move through open space. At Westminster College in Fulton, he continued in 3 sports: baseball, basketball, and track. He set the school record in the 200-meter dash. On the baseball team, though, McBride was a pitcher. That was the version of himself he brought to a tryout with the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals were not especially interested in his pitching. What caught their attention was the way he ran. That evaluation changed the direction of his life. St. Louis selected him in the 37th round of the 1970 amateur draft, so late that little could reasonably have been expected from the pick. McBride became the last player selected and signed in that draft to reach the major leagues.
The distance between a 37th round selection and a major league clubhouse is enormous. McBride did not travel it with complete certainty. By 1972, he had reached Double-A Little Rock and played well enough to earn a promotion to Triple-A Tulsa. He hesitated before reporting because he wondered whether he was ready. His first Triple-A at-bat offered a hard introduction. McBride drove a ball off the outfield wall and appeared to have a triple. Then he was called out for missing second base. It was a small mistake in a long climb, but it captures something important about the player he was still becoming. His speed could carry him farther than almost anyone expected. Learning how to control and apply it would determine how far the career went. McBride reached the Cardinals in July 1973. He appeared in only 40 games, few enough that he retained his rookie status for the following season. He was immediately recognizable, one of the largest afros in the major leagues, an unusual batting stance that placed his weight on his front foot, and a ritual of wiping away the chalk lines of the batter's box before he hit. In 1974, everything came together. McBride played center field alongside Lou Brock and Reggie Smith. All 3 Cardinals outfielders hit better than .300, the first St. Louis starting outfield to do that since 1902. Brock, already one of baseball's great base stealers, broke the Major League single-season record with 118 stolen bases.
McBride added 30, and their combined total established a record for two teammates. McBride said he learned a great deal from Brock. He also believed Brock should have won the National League Most Valuable Player award that year. The admiration placed McBride's own speed inside a tradition. He was no longer merely the runner Cardinals scouts had noticed at a tryout. He was learning the Major League game beside one of the era's defining players. If you first discovered baseball in the 1970s, this may be the version of the game you still carry with you. The bright artificial surfaces, the compact batting helmets, the clouds of dust around a stolen base, and runners who could change an inning before the next pitch was thrown. On those Cardinals, speed was not decoration. It created pressure. With Brock and McBride on the same club, the defense never received much time to breathe. One game late in the season turned that pressure into something extraordinary. The Cardinals and Mets played for 25 innings in New York. Evening gave way to night at Shea Stadium. Innings accumulated on the scoreboard, the crowd thinned, and the game stretched past any normal sense of baseball time. It lasted 7 hours and 4 minutes, then the second longest game in Major League history. In the 25th inning, McBride reached on an infield single. From first base, his speed remained the threat. Mets pitcher Hank Webb attempted a pickoff, but the throw went into right field. McBride kept running. Another error came when the catcher received the throw home, and McBride scored the winning run all the way from first. After 7 hours, it ended not with a clean drive into the gap, but with speed forcing a defense to complete a difficult sequence under exhaustion. McBride's greatest tool had changed the game, even when the ball barely left the infield. He finished 1974 with 173 hits, a .309 batting average, and those 30 stolen bases. The National League named him Rookie of the Year. He was the first Cardinal to win the award since Bill Verdon in 1955. That season could have been the beginning of a smooth rise. Instead, it introduced a pattern that followed him for the rest of his career. McBride would demonstrate exactly how good he could be, and then his body would interrupt the proof. A shoulder injury cost him almost a month in 1975. After he returned, he hurt his left ankle sliding into a catcher's shin guard. A few days later, during batting practice, he fouled a ball off his right ankle. By late July, his average had fallen to .255, and his stolen base pace had slowed. McBride recovered enough to finish the year at .300. That average mattered because it showed what remained beneath the injuries. Even in a disrupted season, he could still put the bat on the ball with the consistency of a top hitter. During the off-season, he added 10 pounds in an effort to strengthen his slender frame. The work appeared to pay off. McBride started 1976 quickly and became the Cardinals' only representative in the All-Star game. By August, he was hitting .335. Then shoulder and knee trouble brought the season to an end. Surgery was needed to repair cartilage in the knee. At 27, McBride had already been a Rookie of the Year and an All-Star. He had hit .300 or better in 3 consecutive full or partial seasons. Yet the concern surrounding him was changing. The question was no longer whether a 37th round pick belonged in the majors. It was how much baseball his body would allow him to play. A different kind of problem arrived in St. Louis the following year. Before the 1977 season, the Cardinals hired Vern Rapp as manager. Rapp was known as a disciplinarian, and he prohibited his players from wearing facial hair. The policy created conflict with McBride and pitcher Al Hrabosky. In late May, St. Louis signed McBride to a 3-year contract. About 3 weeks later, the Cardinals traded him. McBride and Steve Waterbury went to the Philadelphia Phillies.
St. Louis received Tom Underwood, Dane Iorg, and Rick Bossetti. Cardinals broadcaster Jack Buck later said Rapp had undoubtedly forced the trade, though that remained Buck's judgment of what had happened. Whatever drove the decision, the result was immediate. Philadelphia acquired a player entering his prime, and McBride entered a clubhouse built to contend. The Phillies already had Gary Maddox in center field, so McBride moved to right.
It was a significant adjustment, but he made it without losing the offensive game that had established him in St. Louis. In Philadelphia, the summer of 1977 was played on the hard, artificial turf at Veterans Stadium, inside a massive concrete bowl that could turn a close game into a rolling civic argument. McBride arrived with his broad afro, his front-foot stance, and his quiet manner. Phillies fans gave him a new nickname, Shake and Bake. Then he started hitting. McBride batted .339 during his time with Philadelphia that season. After acquiring him, the Phillies went 69-33 and reached the playoffs. A trade that had begun in tension became a professional vindication. St. Louis had decided to move him. Philadelphia found a player who made an already strong club better. For fans who were there, the memory may begin with the vet itself. The steep upper levels, the baseball skipping over the turf, and a new right fielder moving with a stride that looked different from anyone else's. McBride did not need a long introduction. The batting average and the wins supplied it. But his first surge in Philadelphia did not settle his future. In 1978, McBride hit .269, the lowest average of his major league career. He appeared in 122 games, limited partly by injuries and partly because manager Danny Ozark used a platoon system. Trade rumors followed before the 1979 season. If the Phillies could not sign McBride to an extension, they risked losing him to free agency at the end of the year. General manager Paul Owens said he would trade McBride if an extension could not be completed. Philadelphia nearly sent McBride, Tug McGraw, and Larry Christensen to the Texas Rangers for Sparky Lyle and Johnny Grobb at the 1979 winter meetings. The proposed deal fell apart over a deferred payment clause in Lyle's contract. McBride eventually re-signed with the Phillies. His place in Philadelphia had become complicated. He was popular enough to have a nickname, productive enough to help a contender, and uncertain enough to remain in trade discussions. His injuries shaped how often he played. His temperament shaped how some people interpreted what they saw. By 1980, those two things had become impossible to separate. McBride ran with a lopsided gait. To some fans, it looked as though he was not giving full effort. He did not display much emotion, and he generally did not tell the public how badly he was hurting. That combination created an easy stereotype. The player looked casual. The conclusion followed that he must be lazy. Philadelphia Inquirer writer Bill Lyon challenged that interpretation in July 1980. McBride's knee joint had significantly eroded. Lyon described him as essentially a one-legged player. What spectators read as indifference was connected to the physical condition of a man trying to play Major League Baseball on damaged knees. There was also McBride's personality. He said he had never been a man who showed much emotion. To suddenly act more intense, simply to satisfy the crowd, he believed, would be hypocritical. That did not make him an easy player for every fan to understand. Philadelphia's relationship with its athletes has rarely been quiet, and McBride was quiet by nature. He did not perform his pain for the stands. He carried it into right field. Manager Dallas Green saw the result from inside the team. Despite the trouble in McBride's knees and feet, Green called him the Phillies' most consistent player in 1980. The numbers supported that judgment. McBride collected 171 hits, 10th most in the National League, and hit 33 doubles. He fielded his position well enough to lead National League right fielders in putouts.
On a veteran team chasing the championship, he supplied the repeated daily value that can disappear behind louder personalities. Consistency, however, is hard to recognize when a player's body language does not match what people expect effort to look like. That is what made the 1980 World Series so revealing. Philadelphia had reached the postseason before, including McBride's first year with the club, but the Phillies had not completed the journey. Now Kansas City stood between them and a championship. Veterans Stadium looked built for noise that night. The lights washed over the artificial turf.
Phillies red filled the seating decks, while the Royals' road uniforms marked the opposition on the field. Portable radios and television broadcasts carried the same game through row houses, neighborhood bars, and living rooms across the city. If that was part of your baseball childhood, you may remember how a World Series night could make everything else in the house seem secondary. The game came through a box-shaped television. The next morning felt impossibly far away. Every pitch belonged to the whole city. McBride's 3-run home run in Game 1 put the Phillies ahead. The swing gave Philadelphia the lead, but its human consequence reached beyond one inning. A player some people had mistaken for detached had delivered the largest blow of the opening game of the World Series. The Phillies won that night and eventually took the series in 6 games. McBride finished with 7 hits in 23 at-bats, a .304 average. On the sport's largest stage, against the best team in the American League, he remained what Dallas Green had called him: consistent. That October should have fixed McBride's image permanently. He was a champion, and his home run belonged to Philadelphia baseball history. Yet even the triumph could not stop what was happening to his knees. During the strike-shortened 1981 season, knee trouble cost him most of May. He underwent arthroscopic surgery on his left knee shortly before the players' strike. In November, he had surgery on the right knee. The player, whose career had been built on speed, now had operations on both of the joints that made that speed possible. Philadelphia moved on. On February 16, 1982, the Phillies traded McBride to the Cleveland Indians for pitcher Sid Monjay. The transaction also drew attention from the Major League Baseball Players Association. Monjay had turned down a smaller contract offer from Philadelphia while a free agent, and union leader Marvin Miller criticized the trade as an example of owners working together to get around free agency rules. McBride became an unwitting part of a labor controversy that had little to do with his performance. For McBride, the more immediate issue was the surface beneath his feet. The artificial turf in Philadelphia had offered no kindness to surgically repaired knees. Cleveland played on grass, and McBride believed the natural surface at Cleveland Municipal Stadium might suit him better. He would have to learn American League pitches, but there was a practical reason to believe the move could extend his career. Cleveland Municipal Stadium was a different baseball environment from the Vet. It sat beside Lake Erie, vast and open, with large stretches of seating surrounding a natural grass field. For a veteran outfielder coming off 2 knee operations, the green surface represented more than scenery. It offered the possibility of less punishment. McBride began 1982 as Cleveland's starting right fielder. Through 27 games, he hit .365.
That number changes the meaning of what followed. He had not arrived in Cleveland unable to hit. He had not simply aged beyond usefulness. When his name was in the lineup, the bat still worked. Then the problem moved from his knees to his eyes. McBride developed an eye infection and did not play after May 21st. He had worn hard contact lenses since 1970, and he said years of wearing them constantly had damaged his corneas. Attempts to use other kinds of contacts delayed the recovery. The condition of his corneas also meant he could not simply switch to glasses while his eyes healed. For a hitter, vision is timing.
A fraction of a second separates a fastball from a breaking ball, a line drive from a missed swing. McBride could work around pain. He had already spent years doing it. Damaged vision presented a different barrier. Try to remember the scale of Cleveland Municipal Stadium in those years. The broad outfield, the grass underfoot, the grey structure extending far beyond the occupied sections. McBride had come there hoping the field would help preserve his knees. For 27 games with a .365 average, a second act looked possible. Then he could no longer see well enough to play. Almost the entire season disappeared. Before 1983, McBride said he had been free of eye trouble since January, after doctors in Boston made new contact lenses for him. He returned and played in 70 games, but went onto the disabled list twice. His final major league appearance came on October 1, 1983.
McBride filed for free agency that month. There was no ceremonial farewell in the source of his career, no single announcement that wrapped everything neatly. He simply did not play in the majors again. The final record says 11 seasons, 1,153 hits, and 63 home runs. His lifetime batting average was .299, 1 hit in every 1,000 at-bats, separating the visible total from the familiar prestige of 300. That average is an appropriate measure of the career. McBride spent years close to a cleaner, simpler public identity. The 300 hitter, the healthy star, the player everyone understood. The reality remained more complicated and more human. After baseball, McBride retired to Florissant, Missouri. He briefly owned a liquor store and enjoyed the time he could spend with his wife, Celeste, and their 3 children. The game eventually called him back. In 1985, the New York Mets hired McBride as an outfield and base-running coach in their minor league system. He stayed with the organization for 7 years. The Cardinals later brought him back as a minor league hitting coach in the 1990s. There was also one brief return to play. In 1989, McBride appeared for the St. Petersburg Pelicans and Orlando Juice of the Senior Professional Baseball Association. Over 29 games, he hit .296. It was a short final echo of the hitter he had been, still hovering close to 300. His life after the majors also returned the story to where it began. McBride had opened a youth center in Fulton by 1976. He maintained his ties to Missouri and St. Louis. After a career shaped by learning how to turn raw speed into Major League Baseball, he spent years helping younger players develop their own skills. Bake McBride was never elected to the Hall of Fame, and his career totals do not place him near the statistical standards usually associated with Cooperstown. Injuries and illness shortened more than half of his 11 Major League seasons. His knees interrupted one peak. The eye infection nearly erased another opportunity in Cleveland. But those limitations should not be confused with the absence of achievement. McBride rose from the 37th round after attending a high school without a baseball team. He became the National League Rookie of the Year. He became an All-Star. He hit .299 for his career, played outstanding defense in right field, and helped transform the Phillies after arriving in 1977. Then, on a World Series night in Philadelphia, playing through pain that much of the public did not understand, he hit the 3-run home run that put his team ahead. The answer to Bake McBride's career is there in the distance between the way he looked and what he was actually doing. The uneven gait concealed damaged knees. The quiet expression concealed nothing at all. It was simply his nature. Fans searching for visible intensity sometimes missed the consistency in front of them. His career did not reach every place his talent suggested it might. It reached enough places to matter. From Fulton to St. Louis, from a 25th inning at Shea Stadium to a championship night at the Vet. and finally back into the minor leagues, teaching the game after his own body would no longer let him play it. Bake McBride's career was incomplete. His accomplishment was not.